I'm Madison and welcome back to my channel. Today I have some Kindle Unlimited recommendations for you. So today I'm going to be giving you some book recommendations, primarily, mostly, only, all romance books that are on Kindle Unlimited that you can read that I think you absolutely need to read. Like, you need to read. Like, if you have not read these books that are on KU, get your ass up right now, grab your Kindle, put it next to you, and I want to see you sitting there as I'm doing this video, adding these books, downloading them. Kindle lets you download a shit ton of books now on KU. You have the space, babe. Just do it. Okay? Okay. Good. Let's get into it. So I'm going to start with, I think, one that I feel like some people maybe don't know too much about, maybe haven't read before, haven't heard of. I might be throwing you right into the deep end with this book. In fact, I know that I am throwing you into the deep end with this book recommendation. But you know what? I have no shame. I have no shame at all. And to be quite honest with you, it's a good thing this book is on KU because the cover is not something that you necessarily want to be walking around with. However, I do own it. And that is going to be Devil by Ashley Jade. This is a duet. It's called The Devil's Playground. They're both relatively short books, to be quite honest with you. And these are, to put it for better or worse, effed up books. Like extremely, extremely messed up, taboo, forbidden as hell, kinky, dark romances. I went into this duet knowing nothing about it. In fact, the starting of this book has a page that says, you should go into this blind. So I was like, oh, okay, sounds like fun. Let's go into this blind. And you know what? This right here is the book that made me realize, oh, I do like dark romance. I like some messed up shit, bro. The only thing that I was not into was that someone pees on someone, but it's not sexual peeing. It's not... It's not sexual peeing. It's not peeing as a kink. Well, actually, it might have been for... It might have. It was not intended to... You're not meant to think that the peeing is sexy, okay? That is... It's more of a degradation thing, okay? Just putting it out there. Please don't let that turn you off this book, okay? This book is a forbidden, taboo, age gap, throuple at one point romance. There's a lot that goes on in it. The first book, you think you know what you're getting between this like maybe taboo stepdad romance, and then it ends up going back into the past of the stepdad and this other guy, and then you're trying to figure out how this girl fits into everything between these two men and who these two men are, what their past is. There is some MM content in this and some MFM content as well, but the second book of this duet focuses on a strictly FM relationship and is a taboo, forbidden age gap romance. Just trust me, if you like dark romances and you haven't read this yet, you need to, and that's where I'm gonna leave it. I'm also gonna give you another KU book recommendation that I feel like a lot of people haven't heard of, maybe haven't read before. I read this a couple years ago now. I feel like it was back in like 2018-ish, 2019 maybe I read this book. That is Queen Takes Nights by Joley Sue Burkhart. This is a urban vampire romance. It is a polyamorous romance. As the series goes on, more and more people join the polyamorous romance. It just gets larger and larger and larger. I think book one is FMM, if I'm correct. But then as it goes on, more guys and more girls start joining in on it because our main character here, our girly, is actually one of the descendants of the top vampires and is one of the top descendants of the gods. And because of that, she is a vampire queen, and vampire queens have many vampires below them that are part of like her group that she needs to feed off of and have babies with and X, Y, and Z. And so this first book is her finding out that she is a vampire queen, and these two guys, I'm pretty sure it's two dudes. Yeah, these two knights, because every vampire queen has many, many, many knights. These two knights who have been looking for her, who want to be her knights, and her having sexual relationships with these two dudes. There is blood play in this. A blood play is inevitable, in my opinion, when it comes to vampire romances. You're not going to get rid of it. It's there. They're vampires. What do you expect? I think it's a really fun one, so I wanted to recommend it because I feel like no one talks about it. The next book I have to recommend is one of my all-time favorite series that I would say I maybe have made a bit too much of my personality, and I feel like not a lot of people know that enough here on YouTube. I feel like on TikTok I've made it quite clear that I'm obsessed with this book, but this series is the Madison Kate Quartet by Tate James. Now, I'm not impartial to this series just because her name is Madison Kate and my name is Madison. I swear that is not it. Is it beneficial to me? Yes. Would I like to be Madison Kate? Yes. Yes, I love this quartet with my whole ass. This is a polyamorous romance. It is a dark romance, I would say, because there is a stalker situation throughout this quartet. It has a little bit of taboo because two of them might be step siblings, but not really. All of Tate James's series, she's got 3 series, she'll have a 4th one coming out soon. They're all set in this fictional town called Shadowgrove, and Shadowgrove is run by 3 main gangs primarily. So you're following Madison Kate Danvers. She's kind of like royalty in this town, and you're following her. How this book starts off, the prologue, is that she goes to this fighting match, and when she goes to this fighting match, these 2 gangs end up having a gang war during the fighting match, and she ends up getting in the middle of it, and at the end of the day, she accidentally ends up becoming the fall guy for this gang war that she had literally no part in, and she ends up getting framed for it. She almost goes to jail for it. Flash forward like a year and a bit later, she ends up returning to Shadowgrove to go to Shadowgrove University, and when she goes there, she ends up coming back home and finding out that her dad is now engaged to this woman, and now this woman's son is living in the house, including this son's 2 friends. So these 3 dudes are now staying in her house, and her dad and his new lady are now off on like a vacation, and she's stuck there with these 3 guys, and she hates them. She hates them because she met them that year ago at that fighting event, and she believes that they're the reason why she was framed for the gang war. And so she's trying to get revenge on them. They're just trying to protect her because there's something else going on. There's a stalker situation, a lot of shit's going on. I don't want to give you guys more than that. I know it sounds like a lot's going on, but it's a 4-book series. The books get longer and longer, and if I have anything to say about this series, it's that Tate James is the queen of cliffhangers. I have never read an author who gives you such awful cliffhangers in my entire life. I binged this series in 3 days. This book looks kind of small, but they get to like 500 pages. 3 days. 4 books in 3 days. That is how addictive. This is the most addictive series I have read to date. Honestly, hands down. I cannot recommend the series enough. I love all 3 of the guys in this equally. You're wondering, how is that possible? I can't tell you. I can't tell you how that is possible, but for some reason, I somehow love them all equally. And yes, one of them does have a pierced peen. I think that is very important to point out, that one of them has a pierced peen, and I always love pointing out pierced peens because I think that they're really fun to read about in books. So anyway, also Madison Kate is super like out there and sexual and just gorgeous, and I loved her to death. So 5 stars. Wow, I feel like I spent way too long talking about that book. Now we have the book that is the entire reason why I decided to make this video, and that's because this book is finally in Kindle Unlimited. It was not in KU before, and I've been raving about this book for ages. I'm pretty sure you guys are sick of me talking about this book if you watch my videos regularly, but I don't care, because it's my channel. And that book is Come Back For Me by Corinne Michaels. Yes, Corinne Michaels is now in Kindle Unlimited, bitches! I was honestly gonna start this entire recommendation video with this book, but I felt like if I started another recommendation video with a Corinne book again, you guys would just click off because you're like, we've already seen this, Madison. So I was like, okay, let me give you guys a hot second before I introduce Corinne. But Come Back For Me is in KU. This is a small town, second chance, single parent, romance. Corinne is like catnip. I could eat her books up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Easily. One of the best small town romance authors in the entire world. If you have not read her, you're doing yourself a disservice 100%. So the Arrowwood Brothers series follows the Arrowwood Brothers. 4 of them grew up in Sugarloaf. Their dad was an alcoholic, abusive piece of shit. So when they all came of age, they all left Sugarloaf and vowed that they would never return. Their dad passes away. They all come back to kind of, you know, get their inheritance from the will. And they plan on selling the family farm because they don't really want to be tied to Sugarloaf. But when they get there, they find out that their dad has put a stipulation in the will, and the stipulation says that each of the brothers has to spend 6 months on the family farm in order for them to inherit their portion of the will. And so you're following Connor Arrowwood. He is the youngest Arrowwood, and this is him spending his 6 months on the family farm. And when he gets there, he ends up coming across this little girl one day who's on his land in his treehouse, and she seems kind of terrified. Ends up meeting the little girl's mum, and it turns out this little girl's mum is Ellie, who is this woman that he had a one-night stand with 7 years ago before he deployed for, like, I think the army, the navy, one of those things. She has always remembered him, he has always remembered her. They were like instantly like in love, like there was that one night together. They've never forgotten each other, except for the fact that now she is currently married to an abusive piece of shit. So trigger warnings in this book for on-page marital like abuse from a partner. Like he does physically, like her husband does hit her on page. There is no cheating. They end up leaning on each other. They end up coming back together. This is their second chance romance together. And it was absolutely beautiful. It was so amazing. I read this book and I fell in love with it instantly, and I cannot recommend it enough. The next book I have is Lessons in Corruption by Jenna Darling. This is book 1 in the Fallen Men series. This is an MC, which stands for Motorcycle Club Romance. I love this one to death. I was so afraid going into this because I've seen a lot of people rave about it because it is actually a student-teacher relationship, and I was always like, oh my god, I would never read that. I would never like it. But lo and behold, I ate my words like threefold because I love this book and it is one of my favorite books of all time. So you're following Cress and King. King is the heir to the Fallen MC. His dad is the current leader of the Fallen MC. And then you also have Cressida. Cress is trying to get divorced from her husband. She was kind of, I don't want to call her a child bride, but she was basically a child bride, to be quite honest with you. She does not like her husband anymore. She ran away from him, is currently a teacher, an English teacher at a high school. And when she's there, she ends up going to the bar one night, ends up meeting this guy. They end up starting up a whirlwind romance until a couple of weeks later, it's, you know, the first day of school, and the guy walks into her classroom, and that is King. And so she immediately breaks it off with him, is like, I would never date a student, I can't do this, but they have this super, super, super undeniable connection. It is so amazing, it is so beautiful, one of the most gorgeous romances I've read ever, and I absolutely adored it. So please don't knock it off because it is an age gap student-teacher romance. It is actually so well done, and I was so, I love this. I love this book so much. I would read it over and over and over again. It is just the best thing ever. And also, if you guys have never read a Motorcycle Club romance before, this one's really good because it does kind of teach you a little bit more about, you know, how MCs work and things like that, because Cress is unaware of how MCs work, so she's also being taught alongside you, which is kind of nice. So yeah. I, of course, cannot give you guys a Kindle Unlimited book recommendation video without mentioning Sophie Lark. I want to give you guys Yvonne by Sophie Lark just because it is one of my all-time favorite Sophie Lark books. It was my first Sophie Lark book, and so I want to recommend it here. However, I do have an entire guide to Sophie Lark and how to read her in order so that you understand her entire mafia universe, because she does have a very intensive mafia universe that, you know, you should read it in order to get the full experience. So I'll link it up above, but this is one of the books that you can read in it, and this is Yvonne. It is a Russian mafia romance, so it's actually set in Russia. You have Yvonne and Sloane. Sloane is actually an American hit woman, and she ends up getting paid to take out one of the Russian brother bosses, who is Yvonne. So she goes to go take him out. She gets super, super close to almost killing him, but then he ends up capturing her, and it is their romance, and it is amazing. One of the best things you'll read of all time. Honestly, Yvonne and Sloane are one of my OTPs. They're the best couple in the entire world. Sloane is also just such a badass. And you also just can't go wrong with Sophie Lark. She's all on KU, so if you have not read her, I'm just judging you hardcore, bruh. Okay, and then I've got one more book recommendation for you. The Bombshell Effect by Karla Sorenson. So this is a sport romance, and I love sport romances with my entire heart, and this is one of my all-time favorites, especially if you liked It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, or if you like kind of that Elle Woods Legally Blonde kind of character vibe, you definitely need to read this book because this has got like Piper Bellinger, Elle Woods vibes to the max. So you have Allie, and she's basically an heiress. She's been gallivanting her entire life. She's like a supermodel. She's also an Instagram model. She's like everything, okay? Her dad ends up passing away, and her dad passes away. He not only leaves her his entire inheritance, but he also leaves her his football team. And so she ends up moving back to America to kind of be the owner of the Washington Wolves football team. And she ends up moving into one of her dad's old places. And when she moves in, she sees this really hot guy next door with a kid, and she's like, I'm gonna go over and be nice, like bake some cupcakes, try to make friends with my neighbor. She goes over there, goes to give him cupcakes, and he ends up shoving the cupcakes back in her face. And she is offended, okay? Now this guy ends up being Luke Pearson. He is one of the captains of the Washington Wolves football team, and he is a single dad. Now, he is used to groupies and girls coming sometimes to his place to try and like woo him and stuff. And so when Allie, who is this blonde bombshell babe, rocks up on his doorstep, he thinks that she's a groupie and he shoves her cupcakes back on her. So then we flash forward to the next morning where he meets the new owner of the Washington Wolves football team, and it's her. And he's like, oh shit. And she's like, yeah, oh shit's right, motherfucker. And so it's two of them who kind of start off as like frenemies to lovers romance. It is so sweet, it is so adorable. She's so cute with his kid. It's a little bit steamy towards the end. It's not like the smuttiest thing you're gonna read in the entire world, but it is 100% wholesome and hilarious. Such a great rom-com, and especially for like sport romances. And that is gonna be it for part 1 of my Kindle Unlimited romance recommendations. If you guys enjoyed this video, please slap it down below. If you wanna see more of me, please go to my channel. And until next time, thanks a bunch everyone. Bye-bye.